Hello, everyone. My name is Haoyu. I'm an avid dancer of hip hop, house, waacking, and Vogue.
Lovely. And I'm assuming these are all dance styles. How you? I'm not a big dancer myself. Okay. Um, Hello, everyone. This is Haoyu Wang, a rising junior at Swarthmore College in Pennsylvania, majoring in statistics as well as global development. Today, we will be hearing more from Haoyu about the choices he's made, the lessons he's learned along the way, as well as just some advice he'll be sharing with young high school students like yourself listening to the podcast as you prepare for this exciting and upcoming new phase of your life, this roller coaster of a ride called university. So, welcome to my podcast. This is University Unraveled. I'm your host, Arya Dharod, currently studying at Minerva University. Welcome, how you? And it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
My pleasure to you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Same here. Very excited, and I'll dive right into it. I need to begin with your current location. So you're currently in the iconic land of the Masai Mara. So you're in Nairobi, Kenya. What in the world are you doing in Nairobi?
Yeah, actually, I just went to Masai Mara last weekend and it was an amazing place. Well, for my work in Nairobi, I'm currently working interning in a local research and advisory organization with a focus of using behavioral sciences to alleviate global South poverty issues.
Wow, very interesting internship. How have you been enjoying the work so far?
Yeah, it's been pretty great. I really love the work because my work is divided between like academic research and also insurance and risk management. So very excited to learn in different fields and a lot of development stuff, which I'm hugely a huge fan of.
I love behavioral economics as a subject. Like I love the intersection of economics and psychology. So I'm excited for you in terms of diving into that. I want to begin with Swarthmore. Swarthmore is a college which, let's say, someone in my known circle here in India, it would not be aware of the name Swarthmore, even though it's a great school. So it's just very less known as a school itself. You had great grades graduating from high school. You engaged in a lot of interesting extracurriculars. Essentially, you had a great application. So I'm going to put you on the spot and I'm just curious, instead of a prestigious big name Ivy League or a UC, what really attracted you about Swarthmore?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Actually, there are three main reasons I'm particularly drawn to Swarthmore. The first reason is its liberal arts education. So when I was like graduating from high school and entering college, I don't really know what I want to study. However, a liberal arts college, a liberal arts education will allow me to explore different fields. Actually, in Swarthmore, you get to decide your major till sophomore spring. So there's a long period of time for you to explore different subjects, which I like. And for my first semester at Swarthmore, I took classes in different departments like econ, anthropology, music and dance, and philosophy, mathematics and statistics. So with this exploration, I really know like what I like and what I don't like. So with these choices, I am like better I have better understanding of what I really want to do in the future, and that helped me with my future career path or future lifelong journey. So I think liberal arts education is definitely something I'm personally really like because I get to explore a lot. And another highlight of Swarthmore education is that in its first semester, there is a pass or fail system.
Mm.
So within the courses you took in your first semester, you don't have a like grade like A, B, or C. You just have pass or fail. So you don't need to worry about your grades and just put yourself in the studies and learn for the sake of learning. So I think that's one of the key idea in liberal arts education, which is like learn for the sake of learning.
Mm.
And the second reason I'm drawn to Swarthmore is its very close-knit community. Swarthmore is really, really small compared to those Ivy Leagues or UCs. It has only around 1,600 students. So whenever I walk on the main road of our campus, I can basically say hi to everyone, recognize every face, and this really feels like home to me as I'm adapting to Swarthmore. So I really like about the community here. The third reason why is because Swarthmore location. So Swarthmore is not like other liberal arts colleges, actually, because most liberal arts colleges are located in the middle of nowhere, like in the countryside. However, Swarthmore is located in the suburban area of Philadelphia. So Philadelphia is a really big city in the US, and we're very close to it. It's about 30-minute train ride, and we have like free train pass from our college to Center City in Philadelphia. So no matter you want to do like pursue your career in consulting, finance, or tech, there are great opportunities out there in the city. If you want to dive into academics and doing work in academia, there's a very quiet environment for you to immerse yourself in the readings and writings. So the combination of the two really allow me to like see which path wanting to do and choose for my best.
Mm. In fact, I remember hearing from a friend who graduated from Swarthmore about how the location of the universe, of the location of the college is at the same time, it's in a beautiful and a quiet place, but as you said, it's close to a big city. So I feel like best of both
Mhm.
worlds in that sense. So I love that you're bringing that up. Um, I want to double down on the second point specifically, just for listeners who still might be apprehensive, for listeners who are still wondering why that close-knit community is so important. My university is just 200 students per incoming class, so the total size is about 800. I
Wow.
love going to such a small university. I feel like there are huge benefits. I would love for you to say more about why is that close-knit community so important for your college experience.
Yeah, I can talk about it in two aspects. First is the relationship between professor and student. So the
Mm,
relationship between professors and student is actually really, really close at Swarthmore because like in those big universities or public universities, lectures are usually taught by TA, like master students or PhD students. However, in liberal arts colleges, courses are directly taught by professors. So you can access their like wide range of knowledge
mm,
by taking a class from a professor. Also, they are really accessible during office hours. For example, last semester I took a class in multivariable calculus. That class is a little bit hard. So I need a lot of help from the professor, like understanding different concepts because calculus is way behind like it's something I learned in high school. It's such a long time ago. So I really need to catch up. And as sophomore, like for that class, I went to the professor's office hours every week asking some very stupid questions, but she told me there are no stupid questions.
mm,
Every question is worth of asking. So I really touched by that, and I have the courage to ask questions to tell something ask something that I don't know. So I think this is a really important skill because sometimes it is really important for us to know what we don't know and be very honest about it so that we can know what we know. So, or know what we don't know, sorry. So I think this close relationship between teachers and students really allow me to ask those stupid questions,
mm,
but really allow me to improve upon myself. And also in terms of the relationship between students, I feel like a close-knit community is very important to me because you can actually build a very strong support system in college, especially for international students. It can be like really stressful. However, within a very close-knit community and an environment in which you know everyone, it feels really safe. So I don't feel much homesick during my stay at Swarthmore because I have a bunch of close friends and walking on campus, it feels like I'm just meeting my family members every day because we're so close. So I really like that feeling. And within such a close-knit community, you can really find your people and build very strong connections with them.
mm. No, I love that. I would describe it as an extended family, but like a very large
Mm-hmm,
family, but still a family. I feel like, especially with
mm-hmm,
your class, it's just about 400 change, I'm assuming. And so I'm sure you know almost everyone on a first name basis at this
mm-hmm.
point, as well as I just need to say this. I think you're very courageous and brave to take multivariable calculus. It's a class which I would never take over the 4 years at university. So regardless of going to office hours and asking the dumb questions, you taking the class is a big thing in itself. So kudos to
Thank
that.
you.
um, so I'm super interested by the interesting course selection you've done at Swarthmore. So Statistics, as you mentioned to me previously, is a conventional major that Swarthmore offers to its students. Global development
Mm-hmm.
studies is a major which you designed yourself. And if I'm not wrong, it's
That's,
a combination of courses in economics, in politics, as well as anthropology. Am I correct?
yes, it's economics, political science, anthropology.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Leaving aside statistics, I'm especially curious about this independently crafted major. One, why did you choose to design this major? I'm sure it was a lot of work. What was the purpose and intention? And two, would love to walk through the process itself of designing it, and then I'm sure Swarthmore has to eventually approve it. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So actually, I was not a global development studies major, as you already mentioned. It's a self-design major. I was originally intended to be an econ and anthropology student.
mm,
However, I feel like econ for me is a little bit too theoretical, and I want to do more application of economic, especially in the realm of economic development. And
mm,
for anthropology, I love anthropology. Like there are a lot of methodologies and anthropological insights that are particularly meaningful to the world. So I want to see, is there some way, like if I can put these insights and methodologies into specific programs in the realm of international development and make people's life better. So I think that's the original intention behind my special major because I want to get more to the application side and combining econ anthropology is something that I'm very interested in. And I can focus on the application and development aspects within these two like disciplines and make it a special major. And for political science, though I'm not very interested in it, but I think it's still very important, especially like international relations and the work of international organizations are particularly important for global human development. So it's something that my faculty advisor advised me to do, like to take some courses in political science to make sure that you have a basic understanding of the work of international organizations and the current geopolitical situations. So that's my original intention behind designing such a major. And for the process, it is actually a little bit complicated. So first you need to find a faculty advisor because like my special major is something housed in a global studies department. So I find a faculty advisor in the global studies department, and she advised me with like the course list and the course title for my special major. And after reviewing the course list and the course title, I need to go to the department heads of econ, of anthropology, of political science to ask for their approvals because like their course offerings will be involved in my special major.
mm.
So during this like one-to-one discussions between me and the department head, I have a like better understanding of what my major can be and what are the specific knowledge I will learn in my coming 2 or 3 years. So I think these conversations are really helpful and give me a much more clear picture of my independent study. So after consulting with the department heads and asking for their approvals and signatures, everything is settled, and then I just submit my proposal to the school registrar and waiting for their approval. So that's the process. It's like it sounds a little bit complicated. However, I think it is worth it because you can have a lot of discussions about your academic interests along the way, and you gradually figure out more in detail what you are actually drawn to and some specific knowledge that you need to acquire to be more well versed in this field. So I think it is a complex but worthy process for me.
I I I I I respect the decision, and I think you've made it convenient for yourself, right? Like you can skip the econ classes which you want to skip, you can skip the political science classes which you want to skip, and you can skip the anthropology classes which you want to skip. Take the best and sort of leave the rest. So,
Mhm.
interesting decision. I have a feeling that some listeners of this podcast have only a vague idea of what anthropology is as a field of study. So,
Mhm.
just as a 2 minute explanation on a high level, what is anthropology?
Anthropology, according to its definition, is the study of humans, but it's still really vague. So in Swarthmore, our anthropology is focused on socio-cultural anthropology. So it is a study that focuses on the cultures and societies of humans. So we look at like different cultures and different social organizations and how people interact with each other in different cultural contexts and some community practices and how does it influence people, how does it influence like international relations, scale it to a higher level. So we look at like intercultural, interpersonal connections and communications and how does it impact people's lives. So this is a really simple definition of anthropology, and it is totally not conclusive. So it is just one aspect. However, there are also some other aspects of anthropology, for example, biological anthropology.
Okay.
So that is more on like human skeleton, like
Mm,
the evolution of human beings. So that's on the biological side. And also archaeology is
mm,
also within the realm of anthropology as well. So yeah, so these are some of the key strengths of anthropology, and my interest primarily lies in socio-cultural anthropology.
that's a good clarification. That solidified the definition in my mind as well. So
Mhm.
I'm glad I asked this question, even if it might have been basic. Um, is it in your experience and from what you've heard, is it common for Swarthmore students to design their own majors, or is this sort of a rare or a unique thing which you're doing?
So at Swarthmore, there are a few people doing special majors, but not many, to be honest. However, like it's good that the college offers you a choice to design your own major. So many colleges do not have that choice. But at Swarthmore, if you are particularly interested in one area and that is not offered
Mm,
in our college, then you can design one. So I'm very glad that we have the choice to design. But to be very frank, special majors are not very common among Swarthmore students.
mm, mm.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've already said this, but I want to repeat that I love this idea of taking initiative of your learning. Like in the process, I'm sure you had to do a lot of deep thinking about what specific courses and what specific fields do I want to take, like where is my inclination? And I'm sure you also have just as an excuse, I'm sure it's a good excuse to have a good reach to professors as well. And I'm sure you had a lot of back and forth with them. So I love the concept. I wish more people did this versus just sticking to one traditional major. Like I know a lot of people who have interest in like five different fields, but just don't know how to combine them. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
glad we touched on this, and hopefully this is an inspiration to also listeners of the podcast. Please check in with your university regarding special majors. What's the process? Consider it. Like keep it as an option. So beautiful. And I'm also curious to ask you, statistics and global development studies. In my mind, they feel like two different skill sets. Where do you see the intersection in terms of what you're planning to do after you graduate?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So for statistics, it's more on the quantitative side of my skill sets. It's about numbers, it's about figures, it's about graphs. So the quantitative data are really clear and direct and presentable to the world. However, with global development studies, we add stories to the figures, we add stories to the numbers. So it's on the qualitative side of the world. So combining these two disciplines, I can have a better understanding, holistic understanding of the world. And with that, I can better like approach the current challenges existing in the current world and to like analyze them, understand them, and help solve them. So this is something feel like I wanting to do in the long term. However, after graduation, I'm very interested in a career of management consulting. And in management consulting, there are both like qualitative analysis and quantitative analysis. So with these two disciplines, I can have like skills in expert interviews, also data analysis, model building. So I think these are some of the core skills that's required for management consulting as well. So these two areas really prepare me for that career. But in the long term, I'm very interested in like social impact consulting or social impact entrepreneurship. So with the both like qualitative side and quantitative side, I can have a more comprehensive understanding of the world and see things more clearly. Yeah, that's my rationale of like doing these two subjects at the same time.
Very interesting. That's honestly fascinating. I love numbers plus stories. That's going to stick with me. I know a lot of friends who have graduated and found that they either had a skill set that was too quantitative or a skill set that was too qualitative. And I think it's necessary to
Mm-hmm.
have some aspect of both. You can't just be one or the other, black or white. Like we don't live in that
Mm-hmm.
particular world. But I'm so glad, like through your education, you're building both the skill sets versus, let's say, after education, realizing, oh, I missed a quantitative aspect or I missed a qualitative aspect in my degree, and then having to learn the skills. So
Mm-hmm.
I think very interesting. And I also wasn't super clear, but when you explain it, I got an idea as to how these two sort of intersect and then lead forward into management consulting and social impact entrepreneurship. So very interesting. I'm loving this conversation already.
Mm-hmm.
Um, would would love to rewind back a bit further and get into your high school days. As a high
Mm-hmm.
schooler, what were and you applied to Swarthmore, any US college by now, we've understood that as much as academics are important, a ton of other activities and extracurriculars are also very important. So, leaving the academics aside, would just love to touch upon some of the extra activities or projects or other volunteering work which you engaged in as a high schooler, which helped you be a super attractive and a super interesting and unique candidate for a selective school like Swarthmore.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think that's a really important question to address. Well, for me, I don't exactly know why Swarthmore admits me, but I think there are several reasons based on my application profile. So the first reason I think is what I was doing in high school are really are my like continuous passion. So I think the continuity part is really important because you want to show you're passionate about this and doing it for a long time. So actually, the top one activity on my activity list is like my experience working in our high school dance club. I'm the president of our high school dance club. And this is something I'm really interested in because I'm a huge fan of dance. I love different styles. So as the president of our high school dance club, I organize performance like 10 times, over 10 times every year. So that's like continuous
Uh,
passion. I also organize some like workshops in different styles of dance. We invited like outside teachers or students who are particularly like interested in one style of dance. So they give us a workshop in that style. So I think these like peer-to-peer learning and like school and outside learning opportunities are something that I created for my club. So that's another thing. So about this activity, I'm really proud of, and it really shows my continuous passion for dance and how I'm thinking beyond my personal interests and try to create a community of dancers in our school. So that's one. The second reason I think is many of my activities are personally connected to myself. So they are connected to my identities. For example, I have a activity on like a online exhibition for ethnic minorities in China. So me and some of my friends went to um, different ethnic enclaves in China and interview people. And also we interview like working class people and we ask them what is the idea of home in your mind and try to express it using art.
wow.
So the rationale behind this online exhibition is that I'm actually from an ethnic minority background and my parents are also from a working class background. So with these like identities, I want to like delve deeper into my personal identities and connect it to others. So I think personal connection is definitely something that highlights my application. Also, actually, you can also tie academic research to your personal identities. For example, another key activity that I have is on the unique language using a wholesale international jewel market. And that is the market where I grew up. So I noticed the communication between my mom and her clients across the world, especially her clients from Africa. So they are using a very special language, combining Chinese and English. And they also use like calculators as a reference during their communication. So I delved deep into that language use for an anthropological research during my high school. So I think that is another like personal project that I highlighted through my application. So this is the second point. And the third point is most of my activities are also social impact driven. For example, the like online exhibition I mentioned, we have like gathered artworks, over 40 artworks and posted online. So we also make a like WeChat channel for that so that more people can access the artworks. So I think like social impact and how you scale it up to
Mhm.
influence more people is definitely one highlight in your application. And another thing that I want to highlight with the social impact piece is that another key engagement during high school is my involvement in our school gender and sexuality club. So we host like charity sales. We also do like seminars. We also do like sex education theme, like podcasts and everything. So I think how to make your academic interests and your personal identities and connect them to like outside people to a larger audience is something you can consider when thinking about your application activities.
Interesting. I'll just highlight or just recap a couple of the quick pointers. Social impact, involvement in community, some form of leadership, showing impact, like actually having touched people's lives is a great way to show that something was a success. And number three, I love the point about continued passion. I feel like a lot of high schoolers, just for the sake of it, for something that looks good on you on a university application, for like a week, they learn to play the guitar or they go and volunteer somewhere for a week versus still might be valuable. But I think something which you've done, like years of passion with, let's say, the dance club, I think is so much more valuable because you've invested time. It's something you're actually passionate about, which shows through the amount of time you've invested. Plus, you actually had the chance to make a concrete impact. Like a week of volunteering won't create that much of an impact versus something you're working on for years. So I feel like rather than forcing it, go deeper into things you're genuinely interested in and projects you're genuinely interested in. And that is the only thing that can be long term. But I love the idea of long term projects, quality over quantity, like any day in my mind. So, for a high schooler who's listening to the podcast and this far that we've gotten into the conversation, they're really interested in this concept of Swarthmore College. Like they've probably Googled it and they're interested to hear more. For them, what would you say is an ideal student or the kind of student in terms of whatever personality or interests who would really blossom and thrive at an institution like Swarthmore?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question because I've been asked this question for so many times, especially during like college fairs I have like built. So actually, I would say there are not a specific type of student that is particularly suitable for Swarthmore because as in liberal arts education, it's a education that aims to cultivate like well-rounded person. So it intends to suit everyone. However, I think there are some key qualities I want to highlight. The first thing is I think people who thrive at Swarthmore are people who are open to different possibilities because you have like so many choices, you can explore so many academic fields. So you are open to this wide range of opportunities and allow them to pass through you and allow them to make an impact on you. And then you can reflect upon your learning experiences to see what is something that you're genuinely passionate about. So I think be open to different possibilities and allow it to have an impact on you. And then when you reflect, you will know what is the right path for you. So this is the first point. And the second point is proactive students are students who thrive in Swarthmore because in a liberal arts college, all of the resources are dedicated to undergrad students, which means that there are a lot of like research opportunities, academic engagement opportunities, extracurricular opportunities. Therefore, you really need to like be proactive to ask for these opportunities. For example, many of the research opportunities I got are based on my like proactive communication with professors. So I think proactivity is definitely
Mm.
uh, someone needs to have if they want to thrive in any college, actually. So this is the second. And the third point is enjoy learning for the sake of learning, because in liberal arts colleges, there are a lot of readings and writings for sure. So the academic intensity can be a little bit tough, especially at Swarthmore. So I think for a person who really likes learning different things, it will be better for them to thrive at Swarthmore because readings and writings are not that much burden, but something you actually enjoy. So I think these are the three qualities for students who usually thrive at Swarthmore.
Mm. Proactiveness is a great point. Even previous episodes I've done, I ask a common question, which is how are university classes different from high school classes? And like the standard answer in some form or the other has just been that university classes are where it's your onus. Like no one is following up on you like a mother or spoon feeding you in terms of like, do this reading, come to class on time, show up, contribute. You have to seek for the opportunity, like ask and thee shall receive. So you can very well go through university, do nothing, go to your classes, have a good grade and graduate. Or in your case, you can be I mean, you're a perfect example. You can be proactive, you can reach out to profs, you can seek opportunities, but no one's pushing you to do anything. It's totally self-motivated,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is a good preparation for the working world as well, where again, no
Mm-hmm.
one's pushing you to do anything. Um, we've been throwing around this term called liberal arts a lot. I feel like both me and you have some sort of an understanding of what liberal arts means as a concept. For someone who's hearing the term for the first time, what's a high level definition of liberal arts?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't have an official definition, but my definition of liberal arts education is an education that cultivates a well-rounded person who makes a positive impact in the world. So I think that summarizes what I've learned at Swarthmore, because in Swarthmore, there are distribution requirements. You have to take a certain number of courses in each of the three divisions, which include natural science and engineering practicum, humanities, and social science. So you have to be well versed in each of the field to make you a well-rounded person. So both like the qualitative side and quantitative side to prepare you for either work in academia or work in the professional world. So that's one thing. And for the second half of the definition, leaving a positive impact in the world, I think that's something Swarthmore really highlights through its curriculum, because at Swarthmore, we have a center called Lang Center of Civic Responsibility. So in this center, we have a lot of projects of engaged scholarships. So rather than only stay in a classroom, many of the professors and the schools choose to partner with outside organizations to like have students participate in the field and learn things from people in the community. For example, for the last whole year, I was in a program called Chester Semester Fellowship. So this fellowship partners us with like Chester based. Chester is a city close to Swarthmore that has been suffering from like environmental racism. So we have been partnered with nonprofit organizations in Chester and help with the community development issues. So I was partnered with an environmental justice organization, and this organization has done a lot of work in EJ, environmental justice activism, protesting against the incinerator in the city of Chester. So I really learned how environmental studies can be embodied in the field and how we can act upon what we learn to contribute to the community. So I think that's a really important part of education, and that's what liberal arts education particularly can offer, because you not only learn in a classroom, but also learn from the people, from the communities, from the field. So that's what I like about liberal arts education.
Mm. I love the definition. I love the overall concept of liberal arts education. I genuinely feel like it's not just a concept which can be applied to a liberal arts college. I feel like even a huge public university can change its approach to education and become a liberal arts philosophy. And if you're interested, please go deeper. There's a lot of reading about this whole liberal arts approach to education. What are pros and cons? Please check out liberal arts colleges, which maybe a bunch more are going to come on the podcast. Swarthmore, CMC, Pomona, all great colleges. I'm not sure why they're not well known in, let's say, a city like mine, like Hyderabad in South India. But I'm glad we laid that out. This next question, I just want to know that it does not represent my personal views. I'm going to take a devil's advocate stance and ask you a slightly stronger question, but I'm sure you also have a great defense. You mentioned that you don't have to pick a final major until sophomore spring. for someone who maybe isn't super in agreement with this kind of a concept of the general education and the liberal arts philosophy, and someone who's clear about what they want to do, the question is, do you not think it's a waste of time to spend that entire 1+ year without having a clear direction in terms of your major? And if it's not a waste of time, why is it not a waste of time?
Gotcha. That's a really interesting question. So I would say for people who already know their interests and who already have really strong interests, definitely like going to a school that has that specific area of education is definitely something worthy of their time. However, I feel like for most of people like me, for most of people in the world, we really don't know what we really want to study,
Hmm.
especially for people at our age, like 18 or 19. You cannot say for sure because people change all the time. No one is static, especially like for academic interests and also like personal interests, career interests. Everything changes. So I think allow yourself for some time to explore around is definitely a way to know better about yourself because it is a strategy to face the uncertainty, to face the possibility, to face the like changes that happen in our lives. So I think general education or liberal arts education really help us to know better about ourselves, have a clear understanding of what we like and what we don't like along the way, and make better and optimal choices. So yeah, so I think for most of people, liberal arts education is definitely a great choice. But for people who definitely knows like their career or academic interests, it is still really good to go to a school that has like very strong background in that area.
Hmm. I would even go as far as to say, even if someone comes into Swarthmore 120% sure that they want to major in one specific thing, I feel like there is still value in taking courses apart from that major, because I always feel that there is some sort of transfer learning which happens. That could be skills, that could be mindsets, that could be worldviews, that could be concepts, that could even be just random things which you hear in a specific classroom. Like the kind of things said in, let's say, a philosophy classroom, you won't hear in a math classroom. And so I feel there's a lot of transfer which happens. I would go so far as to say, someone who knows they want to do computer science, I think it's still worthwhile for them to take like a philosophy class in university, for them to take a communications class in university, for them to take an economics class in university. Um, there's no harm. You're still going to get the computer science degree, and there's a potential unlimited benefit. You never know when these things could become potential interests, potential minors, but you also defended it very well. Again, not my personal view. I love the general education requirements, but I have a lot of friends who personally feel like such a thing is just a waste of time. So I want to really break that misconception on the podcast. Uh,
I totally agree.
Wonderful. Um, let's hear a little bit more about, this is something I also was researching a little bit into before this episode. You've got this interesting concept of three sister colleges. You have Swarthmore, you have Haverford, and I'm sure I'm going to mispronounce this, but Bryn Mawr College. Um,
Bryn Mawr College.
Perfect. Okay, I'm glad I got it. What does what does what does this collaboration mean, and how does it affect you as a student at Swarthmore?
Yeah, so the like collaboration between Swarthmore, Bryn Mawr, and Haverford is called TriCol, like Tri College in our area.
Mhm.
And these three colleges are not very far away from each other. Swarthmore is a little bit far away. Swarthmore is like 30-minute drive away from the other two schools, and Haverford and Bryn Mawr are very close to each other. And we also like have free shuttle buses from like Swarthmore to Bryn Mawr to Haverford, so it's pretty convenient. So what does it mean for me as a student? So one of the key impacts of this TRICO consortium means you a student is that you can take courses from any of the three colleges because some courses are not offered in one particular campus. So you can like go to other campuses to see if they have like similar courses, if they have like colleges courses you want to take. So that's a really big advantage because many people are concerned about liberal arts colleges because the course offerings can be limited. However, with the TRICO consortium, it is similar to a big university
Okay.
because there are a wide range of courses you can take and a wide range of faculty and student body you can engage with. So diversity is definitely there. And the second thing is that there are many like intercollegiate clubs we call like trico or bico clubs. So these are clubs that have members from two or three college, has students from two or three colleges. So I think that's really important too, because you can like get out of the social bubble and make friends outside of like Swarthmore. So I think that is particularly meaningful for me because actually, in my first semester, I participated in a trical dance club called Rhythm and Motion at Swarthmore, and I got to know like a lot of great dancers, a lot of great souls from Haverford and Bryn Mawr. So I think that's a really great opportunity for me to connect with different people other than like Swarthmore students, which are also really great. So this is the second point. And the third point I want to make is actually Swarthmore's food options are not the best. And they say that Bryn Mawr have like better cafeteria, and also in the town of Ardmore, which is a town close to Haverford and Bryn Mawr, they have like really good restaurants. So I
Mhm.
think like with that consortium, like you can really explore different food options, which is like pretty great and make it similar to a like big university dining experience because you can try different restaurants and cafeteria.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't spoken enough, even in my previous episodes, about food on the podcast. I would love to talk a little bit more about it on future episodes as well. I feel like it's something we take so much for granted, but ultimately, your 3 meals a day are sustaining you. And so I think it's important to find food that works for you and a pattern that works for you. I'm glad you brought up that sort of small aspect, which maybe others would neglect. Just to ensure, correct me if I'm wrong, just to ensure I'm recapping what you said correctly. If I want to take a major which Swarthmore doesn't offer, I can technically take that major in any of the two other colleges and essentially take most of my classes there. Is that correct?
Um, I think that is not the case for Swarthmore. Like for Haverford and Bryn Mawr, I think you can like have a major on the other campus. However, for Swarthmore students, I don't think you're allowed to like have your major based on the other campus, but you can take like two classes, two or three classes per semester at other colleges. And we also have collaboration with University of Pennsylvania, UPenn. So you can take at most one course per semester there as well.
Interesting, interesting. And as you mentioned to me over our call, which was surprising to me, you're just half an hour away from UPenn. So I'm sure that is great access to events and conferences and smart students. So not
Mhm.
as rural as you would think Swarthmore is, because UPenn is in the middle of the city. Um, would love to talk a little bit more about your classes at Swarthmore specifically in terms of structure. How would you differentiate? I know a lot of friends who go to massive universities and they just sit in lecture halls with 200, 300 students and they look down at a professor and the professor just goes through a bunch of slides or make notes on the board. How are your typical classes at Swarthmore different from a lecture like that? What do your classes look like?
Mhm. Yeah, so I can talk about the bigger size class at Swarthmore. So at Swarthmore, usually like econ, biology, like these popular computer science, these popular majors have some big class, but they are not as big as the class in big public universities, like several hundred people. For Swarthmore, I think the biggest class is about like 90 people, which is pretty small compared to
Yeah.
the ones at big university. So that is pretty nice. And for most of our classes, they're really, really small. It's about 10 to 20 usually, but sometimes you can get below 10. So that is a really great because you can actually engage with the professor more, and there are more back and forth between you and the professor and a lot of like intellectually stimulating discussions.
Mhm.
However, like in big universities, you don't experience that because it is so hard for one professor to engage with like so many students during like 75 or 50 minutes. So I think that's a great advantage of Swarthmore classes. And yeah, and we also have a lot of like seminars, also like honor seminars. These are courses, classes that are totally discussion based.
Mhm.
So a lot of interesting and intellectually stimulating discussions between peers and professors. And these classes are highly focused on readings and how you reflect upon the readings. So I think that's a great way to actually engage with the knowledge and like utilize them and express them in your own way. So I think that's a key step in learning as well. So I feel like the class size at Swarthmore really makes up like delve deep into the knowledge and be able to talk about it, to share it. And I think that's a key step in learning.
Mm. I mean, a class of less than 10 people is insane, even to me who goes to Minerva, where a lot of our classes are about 15 to 20 people. Less than 10 people is like you are in constant communication with the professor. There's a constant back and forth. I'm sure a lecture doesn't work in that sort of a setting with that small student to teacher ratio. It's very much just a back and forth and discussion. I think I personally feel like the beauty of going to a university with such intelligent students from all over the world is that as much as you learn from your professors, you should also be learning from your peers around you, which who also have amazing lived experiences. So I love that Swarthmore is giving you that sort of chance or that opportunity. Um, for a student, like I know in our culture, there's definitely a certain amount of distance between a professor versus a student. And so that leads some students, the respect turns into some level of just fear or intimidation when approaching a professor, asking a question, or even, let's say, disagreeing with the professor for God, unfortunately, in some cases. But in your case, I'm sure you interact a lot with professors, like you talk to them. I'm sure you dissent with them as well. How do you get past the initial fear or the initial intimidation of just approaching someone who is a lot older and probably a lot wiser than you? Like, how is that dynamic?
Yeah, I think that's really true because coming from a Chinese education background, like teachers are always like one layer higher than the students. So I totally understood the situation you're talking about. And for me, I think one thing like Swarthmore professor did great is that they really like set expectations for you and they have like required office hours and they like force you to go to their office hours and talk to them. If you don't have any questions, you can just talk about your personal stories, like where you're coming from, like are there any interesting things happening in this week? So I think these casual conversations between like students and professors really help close the gap, like make the relationship more intimate. So I think that's a really important tip for people who want to be more familiar with professors. Like talk about yourselves even though you don't have questions, it's okay. You can just talk about like something funny happening in your life and like maybe your family if you like to talk about them. Yeah, just be more personal because professors are not like really scary people. They are also like humans, and humans communicate with each other. So just treat it as a very normal communication and normal conversation between two people instead of like a conversation between a student and professor. But definitely like having the respect for professor is really important as well. But I think in liberal arts colleges, many professors treat students as their friends and they're really willing to listen to their stories and also like share their ideas around life, share their stories in their lives as well. So I think like make conversation more personal is something people can start doing when they enter college. Like don't make it too academic focused. Don't make it too stressed. Just make it more personally connecting with each other. I think that's a great thing. And yeah, I think that's the most important tip. And I think as I like gradually adapt to the campus, adapt to the teaching styles, I just am accustomed to this kind of close relationship between students and professors. And I think it also takes time too. Just give yourself some time to adapt to the culture, to the education style. And because it is actually pretty chill and I'm sure most people will like it.
Beautiful. No, I mean, at Minerva, we have professors who force us to call them by first name. So it's just
Oh,
John,
that's great.
just Michael, or it's just Catherine. I love that. I love it's not like we don't respect them, but I love that reduces so much of distance, like in one go, with just one simple decision. couple of things which you said, which I'd love to highlight, even for someone who's not at a liberal arts college, where maybe the access to professors is much easier. One, office hours are a great way. You might be in a big college where you're sitting in a lecture hall, unable to talk back and forth to the professor, but please go to their office hours, go speak to them, ask about their research, ask about their work. That's a good way to build that closer one-on-one relationship. And number two, the second point you're saying, if I had listened to you say this like a year ago, I might have disagreed. But 1 year into Minerva, having spoken one on one to a lot of professors, they're surprisingly very interested in just me, my past, my culture, my family, because they're humans as well. They love to learn from a perspective like yours. Like we come from a very different background and upbringing compared to them. So never be shy to sort of talk about yourself. Let them ask a couple of questions. Maybe that's how you will also open up and then begin asking them questions. It's a conversation. It's not a one-way flow of information. Um, but you covered a lot of important bases there. Like this is a lot of things which, especially let's say students from my culture, from your culture, need to hear, especially when they're going to a US college where the professor to student relationship dynamic is much different compared to even our relationship with our teachers in high school who aren't even PhDs, right? Um, we'll touch quickly upon your alumni network. I would love to briefly just touch upon that. Also, because I would love for you to specifically provide, if you can, any concrete examples, because maybe listeners listening to the podcast have some level of apprehension regarding whether the alumni network at Swarthmore is good or valuable, just because you've got a small class and it's less well known compared to, let's say, a bigger university. But specifically and concretely, have your alumni been able to help you and guide you in any form or any way?
Yeah, for sure. So actually, as you know, I'm recruiting for consulting, and consulting is an industry that requires a lot of networking. So
Mhm.
Swarthmore alum really helped me a lot along the way. For example, I connected with like 10 to 20 Swarthmore alums like during like phone calls and Zoom meetings, and they're really happy to help answer my questions in like what this consulting firm is like, what is the life of a consultant is like, and some insights into like their specific industry, like their expertise. So I think these conversations really help me have a better understanding of like what a real consultant's life is like, and to make sure that I'm good for that, I'm prepared for that. So I think these conversations are really helpful. And another thing is that another concrete example of Swarthmore alumni network helping me is that I actually asked for like resume edits during my networking calls with them, and they're really happy to help. Like after we have this meeting, like maybe several weeks later, we schedule another call dedicated to resume edits, and we spend half an hour working on my resume, like going over each bullet point and make sure that they're comprehensible, they're highlighting the impact I'm doing. So I think these are really valuable opportunities I gained from the network, like the opportunity to learn from them and also receive help in resume, like these concrete help from them as well. So I really love that. And usually for Swarthmore alum, they are really quick in response. Like for example, after I sent the connection request, probably within 1 day, they reply back to me. However, this is not the case for the alumni network in big universities like NYU. It might take a day for a day, like several days for them to reply. Also, since there are so many students, so they need to select which student they want to talk to. However, it is generally not the case for Swarthmore students or students of other liberal arts colleges because the size is pretty small. So they have time to talk to each one of them.
That's such an interesting insight. I mean, I hate that we're taking the example of NYU, but I would also run with the example of NYU. Nothing against anyone listening to the podcast who loves NYU, but just a huge college like NYU or another huge public university, there are so many alumni, right? Like you'll find them left, right, and center. This person graduated NYU and this person graduated NYU. I'm guessing if you go back to China, let's say, and find someone who graduated from Swarthmore, there's an instant connect just because it's rare to find that, right? Like if I tomorrow go on the streets of Hyderabad and find a Minervan, immediately I'm bonded because I totally wasn't expecting to find one in Hyderabad just because there's so few students graduating every year. And so I'm sure that closer knit community, which you're talking about, even within the college, I'm sure that also translates to after college, right? Like even in terms of alumni as well as current students. they know that they're not going to find a Swarthmore student left, right, and center. So I'm sure they're happy or maybe even pleasantly surprised when you connect with them. But that's a great way of approaching the question. That's sort of a throwback to the question I asked you. Um, if I were to push you a little further, if there's a listener, if there's someone listening to the podcast who specifically knows they're interested in after graduation getting into management consulting, which is something that you're also interested in, apart from completely apart from just academics and courses at university, you talked about networking. What are some other ways to spend your time wisely to set yourself up for success during university for a management consulting career?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, but I'm not sure I'm the best person to answer it because I'm also like preparing for the application and I did not have an offer yet. But based on my networking calls and what I learned from my peers and also like the graduates from Swarthmore who work in the consulting industry, I think there are like three main parts of management consulting recruitment. The first part is case interviews, which is the one of the most important part. So just get yourself connected with like current consultants and do mock interviews with them and also partner with your peers doing mock case interviews. I think that is the fastest way to grow your like casing skills. And the second part is your behavioral. So behavioral is more about how you reflect upon your previous experiences. What did you learn from your previous internships or leadership roles? So like do regular reflections. For example, keeping a daily diary can help. And also like doing mock behavioral interviews can also help because sometimes like writing it down and talking about it to a person is totally different. So doing both of these things can really help prepare one for behavioral interviews. And the third one is resume. Resume is something that decides whether you pass the first round and get into the interview. So I think this is the very first barrier between you and a job in management consulting. So make sure that your resume is strong, emphasizing all the impacts with quantifiable impacts and also with diverse experiences. Make sure that you're doing the things you can talk about comfortably with others. So I think that's for resume. And sorry for missing out the other point, which is networking. So having these information from the current consultant and also luckily if you have referral, that will really help increase the chance of getting into a great firm.
Mm, that's a good summary. I know you're currently not
Mhm.
with management consulting, but I feel like in your mind you have a clear structure. And from what I've heard as well from Minerva seniors who are in the industry, what you said is very similar. And I have no doubt in my mind that 5 years down the line, when I call you up, you're going to be doing something cool in the management consulting industry if you so wish to. Um, so glad we touched upon this. This is very, very valuable and insightful for a high schooler listening to this. A lot of them are much more clear in their mind, even than me, about what they want to do even after graduation. And management consulting is a new and upcoming field, but difficult to crack, right? Because there's so many different elements even beyond a resume. But you've covered a good comprehensive bucket list. I want to push you a little on one specific thing you said. You already touched upon it a little bit, but I want to go a little deeper. At Minerva, this is something I'm also currently navigating. Is I'm surrounded by so many students who are intelligent and passionate and driven and ambitious, and at such a young age, a lot of them have achieved so much, right? Um, but and I know that it should be an inspiration to me. I know that there is no level of competition, but there are times where I get some feeling of imposter syndrome or not feeling like I belong, or sometimes I do like negative self social comparisons. So for a student like me who's currently still navigating these waters, or someone struggling with too much of social comparison and imposter syndrome, is there anything you'd like to say to them?
Yeah, I think imposter syndrome and social comparison is definitely something I'm also experiencing, and I cannot totally say for sure I'm past that stage. So yeah, this is something that college students face usually. And for me, in terms of imposter syndrome, I think I'm gradually over it because I start to take note of the small achievements in my life. So just keeping track of them, like keeping them in mind, remind you how a great person you are. I believe that everyone is great. So just make sure that you have for example, a mental notebook of all of the little achievements you made in life. I think that will be a great source of inspiration and energy for you. And also just talk to people because sometimes when we are feeling imposter syndrome, the reason behind this is we are looking at them from a very distant way. So when you actually talk to them, you will feel like, oh, they are normal people too. We are feeling the same. We are having similar challenges. So I think that's a great way to like solve imposter syndrome. Just talk to people, and you will find people surrounding you are similar to you as well. And for social comparison, I think sometimes I also fall into that, like doing some negative comparison, though they are totally not necessary. And yeah, I think it's something I'm personally struggling with as well. But one thing I told myself is that we are in different trajectories, and what they want is not what I want, and what they are presenting might not be showcasing all of the challenges, all of the difficulties they're facing in life. So we usually just see the bright side of people, but ignore how hard for it takes for them to achieve that and what are the challenges they are facing to make that achievement. So just recognize that there are up and down sides, there are bright sides and some dark sides you don't know, like some of the efforts they are paying, like in their rooms, like yeah, just make sure that you know people are in different trajectories, and it is a blessing to like meet people from different trajectories, and there is no value of comparing different trajectories because what people want are fundamentally different. And the second thing is that just remember there are upside and downsides, and yeah, just I think these are the tips I'm having, but it's sometimes really hard to do what you're thinking, do what you're saying. So definitely this is something I'm continuing working on, but keeping those in mind really helped me to grapple with these two problems.
Mm. I think we're all human. We're all 18, 19, 20 college students. These things are normal and these things are a part of college life. I've also been doing some thinking around this area. So, a couple of my mental notes, which I can share here. One, I love that quote about the swans swimming gracefully on the lake, but underneath this frantic paddling. So, we only see the beautiful LinkedIn and the swan fits swimming beautifully on the lake, but there was a lot of frantic paddling going on previously and even currently in that person's life who you sort of idolize. Another thing, our trajectory itself is different. If I'm going this way and you're going this way, I can't possibly be comparing myself to you because our just what we want out of life is different. So what's the point of these social comparisons? It's just something that's stuck with me, and I feel like that's something I keep returning to. I was a couple years ago when I was especially I had a little rough phase for a few weeks. I took that time to sort of write a brag sheet, which was like a love letter to self of just all my tiny accomplishments and all the things I'm proud of on a Word document on my laptop. And to this day, anytime I feel like I'm not enough, that's a beautiful place to return to. So if this is a piece of advice that you like, please go ahead and write that one page brag sheet for yourself. Um, and finally, I
Yeah,
think
that's so lovely.
yeah, no, it's genuinely something I keep returning to whenever I need to, and I'm so glad I took out that time during that difficult phase to write it. Um, I think lastly, going and approaching and speaking to the people we idolize, you realize that no one, like everyone is human. No one is above human. Like no one is at that stage of like an idol or a god. Everyone is human. And so even over the next couple of weeks on the podcast, I'm also going to be getting in students from Harvard and Cornell and Brown. And so my intention with them as well, like these are big names. We idolize such students, right? But I really want to humanize them. I want to talk through authentically. They had a college journey like yours. They did social comparisons like yours. They sleep like you do. They need rest like you do. They have difficult times like you do. And so I really want to humanize them and bring them to the level of listeners who are like high school students for whom maybe a Harvard student when I was in 11th grade was like way up there. Like I couldn't potentially bridge that gap. But today, even when I'm interacting with them, I feel like they're college students just like me. Maybe a little smarter, maybe they
Mm-hmm.
got 200 more points on the SAT. But we're all human and we're all college students going through essentially on a high level. I feel like we're all going on the same journey through the 4 years of just finding ourselves. So, just a couple of notes I wanted to make there to add on to what you said. Overall, it's been a beautiful conversation, a lot of hidden gems. I've personally learned a lot as a host as well. And so I have no doubt in my mind that listeners have picked up a lot of invaluable insights from you. Just to give listener, you also touched upon this, but just to give listeners an idea of on a high level where you're going career wise, maybe 10 years down the line, where would you like to see yourself? And this need not be concrete, this can be more high level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mentioned that I'm very interested in social impact entrepreneurship. So that's something I envision myself doing in 10 years. But this is a really big term, and there are so many areas I can contribute in the area of social impact. So yeah, what I would do is just to explore different fields through my career. For example, like management consulting, to see different industries, to see different opportunities, and see what area that interests me the most. And yeah, probably in 10 years, I might be leaving a consulting firm for a startup or something like social impact enterprise, or also probably an MBA, like doing more networking and trying to find people who share similar interests. Yeah, I cannot say for sure, but I would say social impact entrepreneurship is something I will consider my lifelong career for now. And I don't know if it will change or not. I feel like it will not change, but let's see. Hopefully, it will not change. But if it changes, I think I'm still okay with it because maybe I have like different priorities, I have different ambitions. So yeah, I'm very comfortable with changes.
Brilliant, brilliant. And I will make a mental note on my calendar to reconnect with you 10 years down the line and see whether, I mean, remind you about the podcast we had 10 years ago and see what stage of life you're currently at. I feel like it's nice to begin with some sort of an idea, but I'm sure the path sort of keeps making itself clear as you go through every year, every internship, and you understand what's your end purpose. So I'm sure something or the other will change. But beautiful. It's been a gem of a conversation. I cannot leave you without concluding with our fast fire round of questions. So are you
Mhm.
ready for the fast fire round? Can we begin? Can we get into it?
Yes.
Perfect. Um, I would love to start with your favorite concept in statistics.
My favorite concept in statistics is correlation does not equal causation, which is not only a statistical concept, but also you can apply it in your life as well.
Say one sentence more, like explain that.
So something, for example, you see two things happening. For example, you see you're walking on the street and you also experience like somebody just slaps you on in the face. So that does not mean that you're a bad person or you're doing something wrong. It's probably their problem. So the correlation between these two events does not mean that you are causing that. So I'm applying into life. So that's a really silly example, but somehow captures the essence of this statement because things that are happening together or like one next to each other does not mean that you are contributing to it. Like you are the cause of it. Probably there are like other reasons behind it as well. So just don't blame too much on yourself and think about like the external factors when you're like feeling bad.
Yeah, for sure. I can go on and on. I don't want to ramble too long here, but I think this concept applies way beyond math and is sort of a more philosophical concept which you can apply to every area of your life, and it will literally change the way you view the world. So I will just say it again for you to ponder on, which is correlation does not equal causation. And we'll move to the next question. Um, any book or podcast recommendation you have for a young adult listening to this episode?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can say one podcast I've been starting to listening to, which is My First Billion or My First Million. I'm not sure. It's an Apple Podcast, and that captures a lot of like great business ideas, something like entrepreneurs said about their interests and how they deal with things in their lives, not only about business as well. So I think that one is pretty insightful and we'll recommend it to people.
And I will recommend University Unraveled.
Yeah.
That's another great podcast. One dish from home that you missed a lot while you were at Swarthmore.
Mm-hmm. I would say any Cantonese soup because I'm from Guangzhou, which is the center of Cantonese culture, and people there make great soups. And I miss them a lot because I don't know how to make soups.
No, I mean, we all miss food from home. It's part of the struggle. One sentence to describe the Swarthmore experience to an outsider.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is something see from the official marketing campaign, which is anywhere else it would have been an A, which highlights the academic rigor at Swarthmore. But my personal experience, I felt like it is still possible to get an A. Like, just it's not that hard. Probably the courses I take are not that hard. I don't know, but I feel like it is still possible. And just communicate with their professors and pay attention in classes, go to office hours, do all of the homework. I think people are fine.
Hmm. What's the most interesting class you've taken at Swarthmore thus far?
Mm-hmm. The most interesting class I have ever taken is called Gender and Sexuality and Social Change. So in this class, we visited like gender and sexuality topics in different areas around the world, not focused on the US. Like we are looking at like Peru, like Vietnam, like Palestine, and yeah, I think and also like India. So I think this class really expand my horizons and have a much more clear understanding of gender and sexuality and how we can approach it through the lens of social change. And that is also really related to like my ambition as a social impact entrepreneur. So I think that class really helped me to like delve deep into this area and to see what are the current problems and to see like what can we do about it probably.
Beautiful. I wish Minerva offered that class. I think I would take it. I want to end with a last minute, just off the top of my head question, which I feel we haven't touched upon throughout this episode. It's a slightly harder, twisted, darker question, I will admit, but something that's probably again invaluable to a listener who's considering SWOT more seriously after listening to the episode. In your experience, what's been one limitation or drawback of Swarthmore as a college?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. Let me think about it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. For one thing, I think the social circle, it is really close, but it is also really small. So the social scenes at Swarthmore might not be as vibrant as in like those big universities. For example, our parties are great. To be very honest, they are kind of bad, I would say. So if you're a party person, Swarthmore might not be best for you, but we have like a lot of interesting activities. Other than parties, we have club sponsor activities. For example, international a student club has a lot of great opportunities to connect with people. So yeah, I would say that that is the one drawback. The parties are great and the social circles can be small, but you there are other opportunities that you can connect with people and yeah, and also it means a much closer community as well.
Okay. Thank you for being honest about that. We touched upon a lot of great things about Swarthmore. I think it's important that we touched upon these one or two things, which sort of a few people who just might not fit well into the ecosystem because there are always such people. So thank you for being candid about that. Lastly, we're
Mhm.
wrapping up now, but if you had to share one piece of advice to somebody younger than you, it could be about university and could also apply to life at large. What would your advice be?
Yeah, I would say something that is very personal to me. Like I usually say this to myself too. So that is like if you're thinking about doing something, just do it. Don't be too reluctant. Don't be afraid of it because there are virtually no consequence or severe negative consequences of making a bad decision. And yeah, just get your hands dirty first and things will come along. So that's something I always tell myself because I'm a person who always like planning in my head before doing the thing. However, sometimes like planning too much can make me miss out a lot of great opportunities. So I would say if you're considering doing it, or if you think that you're not ready to do it, then it means that you're ready because you're considering the question. So just get into the field, get onto the ground, and get your hands dirty first.
Hmm. I like that phrase of get your hands dirty. And I also want to like, I'll also double down on the fact that as a university student, the risks are infinitely lower of starting something, of whatever, starting a podcast, starting a startup. The risks are infinitely lower compared to 10 years down the line when you have a family, a wife, a child, responsibilities to take care of. So if you're thinking of starting something, now is probably a good time to get onto it. Um, Great
Yeah.
advice. What is the best way for a listener to connect with you if they want to just connect and reach out, or even if they have follow-up questions?
Yeah. If you want to connect with me, you can just shoot me an email to my Gmail account, which is haoyuw327@gmail.com. Probably you can also show it in your show notes if people want to connect. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. We'll put that in the description as well for people to connect.
Mhm.
Um, Thank you so much, Haoyu, for your wise words on University Unraveled. I enjoyed the conversation. I learned a lot of new things about liberal arts, about Swarthmore, about your very interesting course selection, and plus just a lot of college student to college student advice about things like imposter syndrome. So we covered a lot of bases. It's been a very holistic conversation overall. So thank you so much for being on the podcast, and it was my pleasure to host you.
Yeah, it was my pleasure talking to you too. I really learned a lot from you, and it is such a like great achievement for you to host this wonderful podcast and for high schoolers to learn about university's life. Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and I'm very happy that I am able to like come to your podcast and share my experience as well.
All right, that was the episode. To all the young listeners out there, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something new, and I hope you feel more energized, inspired, and curious for the exciting university journey that lies ahead. Stay tuned. Many more wonderful episodes to be released on Uni Unveiled across a diversity of majors, countries, institutions, and speaker profiles. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Uni Unveiled. This podcast is just a small part of a much larger initiative undertaken by my family called Serene Strokes to spread positive sparks of growth, transformation, and joy among all our audience. Check out our official website www.serenestrokes.com. In the description and comments, please feel free to share other topics and questions which you would love to hear about from our different speakers on this podcast. Until then, take care and remember that this big word, university, may not be as scary or as intimidating as you think it is. Thank you for listening to Uni Unveiled.